Some judgments are biased. They are systematically off target. Other judgments are noisy, as people who are expected to agree end up at very different points around the target. Daniel Kahneman. When human beings make decisions, they are often plagued by errors. One common fault is due to biases. This fault has been known and analyzed by many people, including the author in his New York Times best-selling first book. In his new book, Kahneman presents another issue that comes into play as we go for judgments: noise. And you can think of noise like this. A team of archers go to a range to practice. Consistently, they are all missing low and to the left. This is an example of a bias. They are all aiming incorrectly, but in the same area. They are all making the same mistake, but at least it's consistent. Now, if the same team is missing the bullseye all over the target, this would be noisily missing. There is seemingly no rhyme or reason for their inaccuracy. For this reason, a team that is noisily missing is much harder to coach than a team that is missing due to bias. The same goes for our judgments. When we have a bias, say a cashier always gives discounts to girls, yet charges men full price, it is easy to identify. A cashier who seemingly randomly gives out discounts is much harder to identify and fix. This is especially problematic when we expect consistency in judgment or in decisions. Think of doctors and lawyers. We would hope, and even expect, that a group of doctors would come to the same treatment plan, given a diagnosis, but that is not always the case. Personal decisions are often affected by noise as well. Both job interviews and performance reviews could vary greatly between a group of assessors. In fact, it is likely that an assessment would depend more on the person doing the review than the performance of the person being judged. Now, what is a judgment? As a human, we can never be certain that any of our judgments that we make are correct. The problem arises with the fact that the word judgment implies that everyone should agree and come to the same conclusion. Unlike an opinion or a matter of taste, we expect judgments to be agreed upon. In the book, the authors present an example problem with this assumption and about judgments. In the example they present, they give you a candidate for a CEO position at a regional financial firm. They also give you a reasonably in-depth background on the candidate's schooling and work history. Then, given that information, they ask you to give them a score between 0 and 100 as to how likely the candidate is to succeed if hired. If you take this exercise seriously, it is likely that you will struggle with it. You try to weed through the information and decide which pieces are important and which are not. You probably ignore some things and put extra weight into others. Now, what if you and another person did this exercise together? It is highly unlikely that your scores would be the same, and your judgments likely wouldn't match. This is a perfect example of how noise affects judgments. It gets even worse in groups. Factors that should be irrelevant, like who speaks first or last, who speaks with the most confidence, who is smiling or frowning, and even what hand gestures a speaker is making, could influence your judgment on an issue. To amplify this even more, large group events, like social media, make results of any given judgment almost impossible to predict. The level of success in social media conditions was more unpredictable than in independent conditions. Daniel Kahneman. So, what can you do to overcome the noise? Here are 6 tips that the author presents. Number 1, accept that decisions are about accuracy and not individual expression. 2, think statistically and take an outside view of the problem. Number 3, structure judgment into independent tasks. This prevents the problem of excessive coherence, where people distort information that doesn't fit their viewpoint. Number 4, anyone responsible for decisions needs to be aware of and likely discredit intuition. Number 5, take independent judgments from multiple judges and average them out. And number 6, favor relative judgments, that which tend to be less noisy. Remember, some judgments are biased. They are systematically off target. Other judgments are noisy, as people who are expected to agree end up at very different points around a target. Noise is everywhere, and every decision we make is likely clouded by it. By being aware of it and knowing how to limit its ability to influence us, we can start to refine our decision-making process and become more accurate when making judgments. Speaking of accurate decisions, do you think there is a book that we have skipped that needs a summary? If you do, leave your suggestion down in the comments below and hit that thumbs up button while you're down there to like the video and help our channel grow.